To watch my exclusive content not featured anywhere on YouTube, log on to my website at imjustheretomakeyoutthink.com/films.
You are now listening to ethnographic researcher Dane Calloway.
I want y'all to check out somebody named Dane Calloway.
Dane Calloway?
Look into Dane Calloway.
I'ma tell the truth and nothing but it, even if it's out of my constructed budget.
On I'm Just Here to Make You Think Radio.
Oseo everyone. This video will be officially the first video of my Easter Egg Sunday series that I would like to introduce to you. I named it Easter Egg Sunday because I will be discussing information concerning many of the visual messages that are presented throughout my documentaries that you may have missed. And each of these videos will be released every Sunday exclusively to you all watching and not anywhere else. I found this to be something that I always wanted to talk about no sooner as I complete the production of a video at any given time. Because in most cases, the visual messages themselves will tell more information, but the viewer will only catch it if they paid closer attention to detail. So let's go over a more recent Easter egg clipped from my latest video called History Repeats Itself, Only If You Forget It. At about right here. At this mark of the video, the viewer's vision is focused on an image that I will consider an Easter egg, because this image carries a huge message that I want to point out just in case you missed it. Before I forced my hand and used my resources to put pressure on the supporting writers of the transatlantic slave trade story, which made them change their narrative from stating that there were 12.5 million enslaved Africans that were captured and forcefully migrated to the Americas, to now read as 92,000 enslaved Africans as being the total number estimated between 1619 to 1875. I also shared detailed information concerning how it will be impossible to travel across the Atlantic Ocean in that fashion, even if the technology was as advanced as it is today back then, simply due to the rotation of the ocean's current, which nullifies all stories concerning how so-called slave ships traveled to and from. I mentioned all of this again here. Now, let's take things a step further. As you may know, this type of travel was extremely perilous during the time periods prior to any advanced technologies allowing for more propitious routes to be taken. Merchants or sailors traveling across the Atlantic using sailboats had no choice but to take specific routes based on the Volta do Mar Largo, which is a Portuguese phrase meaning turn of the wide sea. This Volta do Mar Largo phrase refers to the oceanic rotation that signifies the ocean's currents, which is why we are taught that the sea is divided into 5 oceans. These 5 oceans are also called ocean gyres, in which each of these gyres represents a different ocean current rotation. Listen closely. According to the National Geographic, the North Atlantic Gyre begins with the northward flow of the Gulf Stream along the east coast of the United States. The Gulf Stream is the western boundary current of the gyre. The gyre then becomes the North Atlantic Current, which flows across the North Atlantic to Europe, still flowing in a circular pattern the current flows south as far as northwestern coast of Africa, where it is known as the Canary Current, the gyre's eastern boundary current. The gyre is completed as the North Atlantic Equatorial Current crosses the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean Sea. This entire circle and the water within it is the North Atlantic Gyre." End quote. As I've stated numerous times before, this means that only the winds and the currents of the ocean could determine how a boat or a ship was able to travel across the Atlantic, revealing the true reason why explorers initially sailed to South America instead of North America first. Also, the winds and the climate made trading and traveling across the ocean very time-consuming, resulting in slowly paced travels that would require several weeks and even months to reach a single destination, yet alone a round trip, all while hoping that the captain sailor has the ability to stay on course. And by the way, this also exposes that these ships were not able to literally travel straight across from one continent to another, due merely to the ocean's current, which can be compared to a game of double dutch, since inexperienced and even senior sailors had to jump in these gyres at the right times or they would lose. They were also limited to just having a compass for direction and the use of their hands to tell time, or rather how much daylight was left, by aligning their fingers with the horizon. All of this sounds difficult, doesn't it? According to the Royal Museums of Greenwich, life at sea during the Age of Sail was filled with hardship. Sailors had to accept cramped conditions, disease, poor food and pay, and bad weather. So, if the sailors had to endure famine for weeks and even months, no pay and no work, sicknesses and diseases, treacherous weather climates, and even cramped living conditions, then how would anyone be able to control, feed, and successfully keep alive hundreds to thousands of so-called slaves that were allegedly captured from Africa and packed like sardines below the deck of their sailboats? Many people died for attempting this voyage, making it extremely difficult to even keep the same crew for more than one seafaring trip across the Atlantic. So in hopes of immediately providing a safer passage by learning the hard way, capacity stipulations were forced on the sizes of cargo and the passengers aboard. But these treacherous conditions continued to plague the foreigners for centuries, making it unrealistic to transport millions of so-called slaves from one continent to another between the early 1600s to the late 1800s across the Atlantic. This is why you would not find any historical evidence nor colonial documentation of a transatlantic slave trade during this time period. That task would be simply impossible for anyone to accomplish, especially the way that we were taught how the story goes. Also, I previously shared even more information along with primary sources of documentation, exposing just how much the transatlantic slave trade story is completely fictional, but designed as a weapon known as fear-mongering, which is used against particular groups of people's subconsciousness psychologically. And this image says a lot. What can you see in this picture? Now, obviously, we see so-called slaves chained to their wooden bunkers. And by the setting of this image, we can tell that they are locked up under the bottom portion of the boat. We also see two figures walking down the steps leading to this portion of the boat. What's important to note here is that these two figures are fully clothed as if they are not enslaved or under any sort of threat to be enslaved. Now, I want you to take a look at the guy at the top. Notice that he's wearing white gloves. What rings a bell here when you think about someone wearing white gloves? You can recall seeing ushers at a church wearing white gloves, in which they usually either usher you to an available seat or ushering the offering plate around the church when it's time to donate. You may even recall seeing Michael Jackson or that Queen Elizabeth also wears white gloves, symbolizing a higher status, power, and protection, as well as some form of nobility. And clearly, we can see that both figures carry the same skin complexion as those in chains. Are these figures representing assistant managerial roles of enslavement? Or are they representing the masterminds behind slavery in general? Now keep in mind that we do not see any figurative representation of a pale-faced individual throughout this entire depiction. So the artist is clearly sending across the message that indicates that it was people of color that enslaved their very own people. You will find that many authors of history are racially biased when it comes to the truth about any story they choose to publish. Even the earlier years during the implementation of the Patent Office and its rules, you will find that many great ideas and brilliant creations derived from the indigenous people here in America, but the financial gain, or rather the credit, is lawfully given to someone else. So, would it be hard to imagine that the credit of being a so-called slave master was purposely written in history to make it seem unrealistic to fit a so-called black man? Maybe the authors of history thought that they should tell you what happened to make themselves look like emperors or people that are held in higher regard than any other, just so you will believe that your people were always enslaved, and if they fought back, they died, keeping you in fear of the invincible, when in reality, strangers don't want you to visibly witness their fear of you. I'm just here to make you think.